everybody. It's Monday. It's Monday, and we're at issue 4 of the warm-up. And no, it's not Mornin here, but it is somewhere else. So, guys, had a bit of a shakeup. Donnie got a hold of me. He had a bit of an emergency he had to deal with, and so he couldn't be on at the hour. So we'll move on and we'll have Donnie on at another time. So this, of course, leaves me in a very precarious place because I am live and I got nothing. But that's not true, actually. I had somebody who's coming in to fill in. Editor extraordinaire Tom Brevoort is going to come on. Called him literally 3 minutes ago. Brushed his hair, put on a baseball cap. I have no idea what he's really going to look like, but he decided he's going to come on. He's going to chat with us a little bit about Marvel, his career, Marvel history, because he is the Marvel encyclopedia. So sorry for those of you guys who came on to watch Donnie. I apologize. He could not make it. He tried his best, but unfortunately, life, man, life. So a couple of things. First of all, I promise that the title has morning in it, and I promise eventually we will have some morning broadcasts. It becomes a little bit difficult when you're going live and you have guests that live on other sides of the coast or in other countries, which we will have guests from other countries probably this week. And so we'll get there. We may have to pre-record some of these live depending on the guest, but it will be live in some way. Also, very, very important, I'm going to give you guys a heads up on this. Let's do a lot of Q&A today, right? We've got some time, right? I have no pre-planned questions for Tom. So anything you guys might have top of mind, feel free to join in. Understand also that you want to get these in early because I cannot see the question feed. I've never been able to. So we have someone else who's looking at that. It's just way too much for my pea brain to handle. So put those questions in because then they have to go and be text to me and the whole thing, and it takes a little bit of time. So if you want to try to get your question answered, get it in early. Also, just a little bit of a catch up for me. This is day 21 of social distancing. Doing okay? Hanging in there. We're all hanging in there. How are you doing? You doing okay? You hanging in there? I'm not quite sure what date it is. It might be by year end, but hopefully you're doing well. You're staying healthy, and you and your family and loved ones and friends are all staying healthy along with us. On a more somber note, I want to talk a little bit about a family member that I lost, that everyone in my family lost, and it wasn't because of the virus, but due to the virus, it made it impossible. She was in the hospital, made it impossible for her family to see her anytime before her passing, and certainly afterwards. Setting up services, memorials, any of that stuff is clearly impossible for a family to do right now. Not just my family, but other people's families as well. So it's even tough to grieve and let go in that family sense. We will all get together eventually, but I wanted to give condolences to my cousins Ellie, Armando, and Rob, and their father Armando Sr. We lost Chepa Fente. Her real name was Maria, or Mary, but like so many people in my family, she had a nickname. She was Chepa. She was always Chepa. My mom was Naya. My dad was Tito. My cousin was Porky. Sorry, Armando. And I was Josie. So we grew up it was a Cuban family. My cousins and I were first generation born here, but Chepa was one of those members. You have members in your family and you see them grow old, and then there are members of your family that become sort of the elders, right? The key figures. My grandfather was one of them. Chepa was one of them too. She was what was referred to within our family as a treasure. I think you all in your families, I hope you have treasures. She was that sort of guiding light that when the older generation passed away, she stood up and she became that treasure, and we've lost her. She is probably the last of that generation for our family. So my heart goes out to my cousins, to my entire family. I loved her dearly. I know you guys loved her dearly. It's a huge loss for us. So again, I just wanted to talk a little bit about that, and get it off my chest and say hi to my cousins as well. On a brighter note, wanted to catch up. My buddy Dave Johnson celebrated a birthday last week. Dave turned 63 last week. He's a good guy, great guy, fantastic artist. If you don't know Dave's artwork, go check it out, especially his cover work. One of the true geniuses of cover design in our industry today. And I also want to give a shout out to all the kids at Greystone School. I'm going to get the pronunciation of the city wrong, but it's Misenheimer, North Carolina. Did I get that right? Hopefully I got it right. Well, listen, your art teacher, Mr. Phillips, wanted me to let your kids know. First of all, you're doing great. You're doing great with all the social distancing and everything that comes with it. But I also know if my daughter's any indication, it's got to be incredibly frustrating, right? And I know you're probably feeling like, oh my God, this is never going to end. I can assure you guys, this will pass. This will end. And take the time that you have right now, right? Take the time you have right now. Spend it with your family. Spend it with your loved ones. You will be with your friends shortly. This will pass. Promise you, it's not forever. So hang in there. Hey, Mr. Phillips, thanks for letting me know. You guys are great, and the kids in that art class, keep drawing and make sure to read your comic books. Okay, so not a lot else to really talk about here right now because I had a full Donnie kind of interview set up and all sorts of images and stuff like that. Didn't even have really a tutorial set up to talk about. But I do have probably one of the greatest editors in the history of comics. Certainly one of the best editors, or actually what I think is the best editor working in comics right at this moment, like editing books. So he took his time from editing at home, and let's see if I can get the Skype machine working here. Let's see, Tom, unmute your microphone when you can. Let's see, are you there? Hey, Tom, can you hear me?
Hey, how you
Hey,
doing?
how's it going? All right, awesome, man.
Very good.
Hang on,
I want to.
go
Very
ahead.
good. I want to start, Joe, by first giving you my condolences. That
Thanks, Tom.
was very heartfelt, yeah, obviously we've all felt the loss like this at some point, and it's a tough thing. I'm sorry you're going through that. Obviously, a lot of other people are also dealing with similar things.
Yeah.
So I wanted to give you my best wishes.
Oh, thanks.
Secondly, from this point on, you're never going to be referred to by me as anything other than Josie.
That's my fear, right?
So,
That's the fear about
so
putting out
that's
that nickname. It's so funny because it was more like I could hear my dad's voice. He'd be like, Jesse,
to
Jesse.
say,
My
yeah.
grandfather was the exact same way, and my great aunts and grand aunts and all my aunts and Chepa was one of my aunts, and she always referred to me as Jose. So it wasn't quite Josie, but if I was to spell it, it'd probably be the exact, Josie. So have at it, Tom. It's okay.
Well,
I'm not embarrassed by it.
that's going in the books. We're keeping a hold on that one.
Thanks, man. So Tom, okay, let's break the ice here. How many years have you been editing at Marvel?
I have been at Marvel. Last December was my 30th, so I'm now into 31. I think I've spent them all in this room. It certainly feels that way at this point. We are going into week 4 of working at home,
Yeah.
and it's a you do it. Your studio is at home, so to some degree you're kind of used to that. But even you can get the break by coming into the offices with us and seeing us, and
Yeah.
every once in a while you'll fly out to the West Coast or do whatever. But for me, I've always been really good about separating like the office time from the home time.
Mhm.
And while I'll check email or I'll do little things usually when I'm at home, typically I'll leave as much as I can the brain work of the office at the office, and that's just not possible now.
Yeah.
And so I'm slowly going batshit crazy here, as is everybody, I'm sure.
Yep.
We're holding on. We're holding on. It's good. It's all
Great.
right.
Yeah, I can imagine this had to be really, really tough for you. I mean, again, I'm kind of used to this. And if someone came in and told me, by the way, it's not day 21, it's day 127, I'd be like, all right, That's fair. I get that. Probably is. And I am in my undisclosed bunker. I mean, nobody at Marvel knows where my bunker is. So when I do show up at
This
the
is
office,
true.
I have to put the periscope up and look and make sure if there's anybody coming, and then escape from this thing so that nobody actually knows where I am. But it's dark, and there's probably mold growing everywhere, which is kind of how I like it. Uh, so, so Tom, tell me about those early. I mean, we had that huge celebration for you, right? Where everyone showed up, and we gave you that sort of Disney award, right? That you get
Yeah,
for
yeah, it's very nice.
even though we weren't part of Disney for 30 years, they still acknowledge your 30 years at Marvel, the company. So. So tell me about those early days. I mean, what got you in through the door? How did where did you land? Were you an intern? How did this happen?
Sure. Well, I was an illustration major at the University of Delaware. So I was an art guy. You can't really tell much of that anymore because my skills, which weren't all that terrific to begin with, have atrophied terribly over the years through disuse. You know this. If you don't do it, so much of that skill
Mm-hmm.
is muscle memory. Like your
Yeah.
your your body and your brain, that connection, that flow. You have to do it again and again and again, like any other physical activity, to really be proficient at it. And I have not done any of that in
Right.
years. So I can still pick around the edges of stuff, but I'm no good. And I wasn't all that great to begin with. But I am. All of what I can remember being able to do, it is gone. The hand and the arm and everything will not do
Right.
what the brain tells it to do anymore. I'd have to take a couple of months to get back to that. But anyway, I'd gone into the illustration program at the U of D. I had been a comics reader since I was like 6.
Mm.
And so it was always kind of in the back of my head. The goal was to somehow do comics. And I figured I was going to be doing comics. Like, this was the days, it was the 80s. So it was kind of the rise of the direct market and the small indie publisher, and a lot of stuff that was even self-published. And I kind of imagined that I'm going to get out of school, I'm going to get some kind of a day job, and I'm going to do comics on the side at night or whatnot until whatever magical big break there is happens. And for orientation in the illustration program, the dean of the school comes out and he addresses all the kids and walks them through the program. And the program, it was a 4-year program, and your first 2 years is just foundational.
Right.
And then your third year, you specialize. And then by your fourth year, you got to put on a show by the end. But in the summer of, between your junior and senior year, one of the requirements was you have to go out and get an internship related to the field in some way. And the dean, is talking through all this stuff. And he says, we've had people go here and here, and at DuPont, they did this here. And we even had one kid who went and interned at Marvel, and I thought in the crowd sitting there, that's going to be me in 3 years. That's what I'm going to do. So 3 years go by. I half-assedly do all of my my stuff for that period. I'm working my fast food day job and a weekend job to keep some kind of cash coming in. And comes time, and I send letters of inquiry out, and I send them to Marvel, but I send them to everybody else in the field too. There were a bunch of publishers then, a lot of smaller outfits,
Right.
and DC. And Marvel got back to me, and DC never did. They never did, Joe.
I
But
I
I'm
understand. That
but
cuts
I'm
deep, dude. It
sure
cuts deep.
I'm sure today's the day when I go out to my mailbox. I'm gonna find that letter there, and finally the opportunity will be mine. In the meantime, though, Marvel responded. Suzanne Gaffney, who was at
Ah,
that time
Suzanne.
Tom DeFalco's assistant.
Yeah.
Yeah, Suzanne. She was overseeing the intern program, and she sent me a letter back saying, "Here's all the stuff that you need to do this. If you want to do it, send us this, that, and the other thing." And I did. And so I ended up spending the summer of 1989, living in Valley Stream with my grandparents. My grandparents and my aunt and uncle
Mm.
all shared a 2-floor house in Valley Stream. And I would go into the city 5 days a week to intern at Marvel, Monday through Friday. And then Saturday and Sunday, uh, my manager at my Roy Rogers in Delaware, where I worked my shitty job, I did that job for 5 years.
Right.
He called into corporate and got me transferred for the 3 months to the Roy Rogers in Valley Stream. So on the weekends, I would go and cook chicken and make burgers and clean grease traps and craft. So I worked like 7 days a week for the course of that summer, pretty much.
Right.
And the marvel of that period, like the biggest difference, and you'll remember this because you came in at around that time. Like
Mhm.
it wasn't that much later that you were around. Everything was done by hand. There were no computers. Like when I walked into the place, there was literally one computer in the building. It was set up there for the designers, and I knew how to use it better than anybody that was there. I didn't know how to use it great, but I was good enough that I ended up doing freelance typesetting computer balloons in Thanos Quest for, I don't know, $25 a page or something, like a lettering fee,
Wow.
and Deathlock balloons and things because I could do it, and nobody else either could or was comfortable with it. It was a couple of years before we got the first real widespread computers at Marvel, which were the little tiny, Mac Pro, little
Oh my God. Yeah.
little boxes.
Yeah.
Yeah, the little Bevo desktop computers, which we all had for many years with their black and white screens and their tiny little disk drives. So I did that for the 3 months, June to August, 5 days a week. I interned in 3 offices. The Marvel offices at that point, we were kind of at the cusp of an expansion. Nobody knew there would be an expansion, but it was 89 going into 90. The guys that would become the Image guys, Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee, Rob
Mhm.
Liefeld, Mark Silvestri, all those guys were really on the ascendancy. They were all doing Marvel books, and their stuff was starting to catch fire, and sales were starting to follow. And so, Marvel was beginning to expand. But I ended up interning in 3 offices. There was a trio of offices in this at the end of this, one wing in the back corner. And it was with Bob Budiansky and Dwayne McDuffie, who ran special projects, which was basically what we would now consider the licensing department.
Mhm.
All that stuff, because there was so little of it relatively, was done out of that one office. And I interned with Craig Anderson and Renee Witterstatter, and they were doing mostly the cosmic books, the space books, so Guardians of the
Right.
Galaxy and Silver Surfer and a bunch of other things. What If? And then the third office was Greg Wright and Evan Skolnick. And Greg was the managing editor. In those days, what we now call associate editor was called managing editor for some reason. And there was only one. Like it was sort of like your intermediate step. When you were an assistant and you were ready to be promoted up, you'd be promoted to associate editor, and they'd give you like a half workload to edit yourself under the supervision of another editor, and that was Greg. And so they were doing a couple of titles and the Marvel Masterworks, and helping out Buddha on anything that he needed. And so ultimately, it turned out I was a pretty good intern. I was probably, that was where I excelled, and I've just slowly,
Quick question.
found
Quick
yeah.
question. Were you better than my greatest intern ever, Nick Lowe?
I was definitely better than Nick Lowe.
Ooh, really? All right.
For
Them's his
for
fighting words.
sure.
Okay. Sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt it. Keep going.
Ah, I'll get me started on Nick Lowe. Man, we'll be here all day. Um, but yeah, the big thing I did that knocked everybody out the first week is, in those days we had an open submission policy. And in fact, it wasn't impossible for people, particularly artists, to get hired out of a blind submission.
Mhm.
But the submissions editor was always the assistant editor of the managing editor, basically the lowest ranking guy on the totem pole. And for a period of, I was told it was like 18 months, 2 years, um, pretty much nobody had touched this stack. And submissions were everywhere. They were
Yeah.
under the desk. They were piled in the corner. There was a closet. There's 18 months of submissions that had to be gone through. And they said to me, well, look, when you're not doing other shit, I should probably be saying nicer things. I'll watch my language.
Tom, I was going to interrupt you to and say,
Yeah.
one reminder. We're on a Marvel broadcast, so in
Yeah.
the immortal words of Captain America, language. Thanks.
Definitely. So they said anytime you're not doing other stuff, uh, you know, uh, you know, go through the submissions and respond to or answer back all the ones that are garbage, or that are not up to snuff, which will be most of them. And anything that's any good, pull aside, and we can evaluate it and send it around. And I burned through that backlog of stuff in a week.
Wow.
And everybody was like, "There's nothing here anymore," and they kept being impressed. I came in because I had not only done the illustration work, but I had done a bunch of work on fanzines and things like that. I came in with some halfway decent chops at being able to do most of the tasks that you'd have to do to work in comics. So I could do paste up and I could do simple lettering corrections. There's even it's an issue of Avengers Spotlight. It's a shot of there's an image in this issue where somebody is like phasing through a wall, and whoever had penciled it did it in a way that wasn't acceptable to Greg Wright, and I ended up repenciling that figure,
Nice.
which Al Milgrom turned into a real panel.
Right.
My scribble was not really any good, and probably no better, and probably worse than the guy who had drawn it originally. But that was like my first little Marvel, bit of art. So that summer I did everything. I pasted up black and white magazines. We were working on things like the Nightmare on Elm Street magazine, and I did all the paste up on that. And I remember it being a rush, like it's all got to be done today. It's all got to
Right.
be done today. It's all, you know, 6 months later when I was back in, book still hadn't gone to press, and I ended up being the assistant who sent it off to press. Um, but I did all that stuff. I did paste up on Marvel Masterworks, and gathered reference, and put stuff together. Helped out the bullpen, and so essentially, all the various editors that I worked with were pretty impressed, and were actively looking by the time I was done
Yeah.
to get me on staff, and make me a part of the crew on a regular basis. And the other thing I found doing it was I was really well equipped to do all of that, where I was not as well equipped to actually sit at a drawing table, or these days a tablet, or
Mm.
a computer, and draw all day.
Right. Right.
So it really, it ended up being a pretty good fit, and I kind of found my niche there.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you say you have this illustration background, right? I mean, clearly you have a comic book background because you read them as a kid, and you're one of these people that just seems to have as close to a photographic memory as I've ever seen in comics. And for those who don't know Tom very well, or are familiar with his stats, Tom is the guy. Like generally we could wiki a lot of stuff, but there's stuff you just can't. But we could just as easily go to Tom and say, "Hey, Tom, when did this scene occur?" And Tom could almost always tell you the issue number, the artist, the writer, all the information you need about this stuff. It's actually kind of crazy how he does this. But one of the things, when you're talking about having the illustration background, I remember, I got into the industry as an artist, and I wanted to really be a writer as well. But I knew I had to refine myself in both areas. But my art was going to get me the attention first, and then eventually refine my
Yeah,
writing in whichever way I could. So I really, I studied a lot, and one of the courses I took during that time period was the Robert McKee story course, which is
right.
almost something required if you want to be a screenwriter, or a writer of anything really in sort of the popular genres. And I remember, and I've actually taken it several times since. It just repeating it and refreshing it. Took it with my daughter, and she got a lot out of it. But one of the things that I found that was really important about it, and one of the things that and I didn't really understand it until I started working in television and started working with actors and showrunners, which is, he encouraged um, actors to take his course, but he also encouraged writers to understand it, because his course is 3 days. The main course is 3 days, and it literally is like a one man Shakespearean performance. He used to be an actor, a stage actor himself. So he gives this performance, and part of it is for writers to understand exactly how to write for actors, but more importantly, he encouraged actors to take the course so they understand exactly what a writer is thinking and going through before they put the words on a page, and how every word could have a succinct meaning in the whole of the story. And I found that really interesting back then, but I found it even more interesting once I was in a field where I was working with actors and other people in the performance arena, because you realize how important the writing is, and how you're writing not just for actors but for everyone, right? And actors are not just reading lines. There's so much more that goes behind it, and understanding that process makes you a better actor. Understanding that process makes you a better writer, director, producer, whatever it may be. So I think in your case, right, I'm sure that that illustration background came in, and by the way, we encourage our editors as well, right? Take some writing courses. We've sent them to the McKee course, because I think it's
Yeah.
important for them to understand what writers are going through, and we've had great artists come and teach at Marvel, right? I was speaking to Chaikin the other night. Klaus Janson has come down, and they've taught storytelling at Marvel. And I think having that kind of a well-rounded background makes it easier, and not necessarily easier, but it makes it easier to communicate to a creator what you're hoping to get out of them, or what you're hoping for them to really achieve, right? Because our goal is not to write the stories or draw the stories for them, but to put them on, sort of on a course where they can really do the very, very best work they can. In some cases,
Yeah.
really easy, right? But have you found that's been a real help to you in these years at Marvel?
Oh, definitely. And having the crummy skill set that I still do, on occasion, I'll sit down and I'll do a very quick doodle just to communicate something visually that's much easier drawn than it is explained. I can talk about all I want about how you should frame this shot where the guy punches the other guy, but it's a lot easier to just do a quick doodle, and it
Hmm.
doesn't matter that anatomically it's a mess, and as long as it communicates the idea,
Yeah,
look, that's how the shot is framed. Somebody who's way more skilled than I am at composition, anatomy, dynamics, foreshortening, can take that idea and carry it to a finish, but they can kind of see what's in my head and what I'm driving at, what the
yeah.
thing is I'm trying to get to, and trying to get them to get to, in a way that they could process and understand. So I use those kind of skills
Mhm.
all the time. You talk to a lot of the artists that I've worked with over the years, and they'll all tell you stories of me either sending them little scribbles that are done on sticky notes or whatever, or in certain cases, I'll send them other comics. I'll
Yeah,
go, it's like this. Here's a Teen Titans issue from 1968. We want an
yeah,
idea. We don't want this cover, but we want this kind of an idea, this kind of dramatics, this kind of image. And so I use those skills all the time,
mhm.
and to the point where I don't even really think about it.
Well,
And hopefully,
it's funny how those things transfer into other mediums, right? Because when you say that, I immediately think of when we were doing our TV shows, like the mood boards we create, right? So before
Mhm.
we get started with a particular series, right? Before we launch something, a showrunner and or director would get together and create a mood board and say, this is the look of the show, this is the
yeah,
palette for the show, and 99% of that stuff is stuff pulled from other movies, from photographs, from TV shows, just to give a sense of texturally what this will look like before frame one is even shot. So sorry, didn't mean to interrupt
yeah, no, it's exactly the same kind of thing. And at this point, I don't even think about it as a separate skill set or
you.
anything. It's all part and parcel of whatever the bucket of skills there are that I use doing this day to day.
Yeah,
And again, hopefully, I'm able to communicate and convey some of that down the line to the other younger editors that are coming up.
yeah,
Which I think is part of the importance of what we do as well.
it's a
Anytime
job.
you come in and are able to spend a few hours, either a bunch of times over the last couple of years, you've gone through stacks of covers and written up quick notes here. These are finished covers, but you go and I would have done this, or this works, this doesn't work, or here's a way. I find that stuff super helpful. I find it helpful for myself because, for all that I know a bunch of stuff, nobody knows everything in this business, and so I should always be learning stuff.
Mm.
And the same thing for all the younger editors. It's good to be able to get that feedback and have that other set of eyes and get them seeing and thinking about this stuff in a different way, and understanding, how to make an image, how to craft a sequence, how to create drama and turn lines on paper into people that you care about.
Right, right, right. And to that, you do a thing at Marvel. Well, when we were at Marvel, and you'll do it again when we're back, called the Reading Circle, right?
Yes, yes. Every Tuesday over lunch, we gather in our big conference room and we eat lunch. And the Friday before or the Thursday before, we'll have picked one or two books that we've put out in the bundle and that are about to drop on Wednesday. And everybody in the room will read them, and we'll just talk about them, and we'll dissect them and try to figure out what went right, what went wrong. And typically there'll be somebody in the room, one of the assistants or even the editor, who worked on it, who may give us some insight into why they made the choices that they made and how things came about. And it's not as it's not as harsh as I would like it to be, because people are
Yeah,
people, and nobody wants to be a jerk about a book to somebody else who's sitting right there, who
yeah,
you could
yeah.
totally empathize with how hard it is to do this gig. And so the last thing you really want to do is make somebody feel bad about a thing they put out.
Mhm.
But that's also the only way you learn stuff, is by analyzing what went wrong, and not making the same mistake the next time.
Right,
You
right,
know,
right,
I
right,
tell all of my guys, I don't mind if you make a mistake. I mind it if you make the same mistake
right.
again and again, because that means you're not figuring it out or fixing the problem.
Yeah. So Tom, we have a question here. I'm going to post it up. You can't see it, but I will read it for you. From Vasco, what comics have you guys been reading recently with all this free time?
Whew, I have not been reading as many as I would like because nobody's distributing them anymore. But I did get a shipment from Midtown end of last week.
Right.
My last box of comics, that I sent for from them, and I read a bunch of things over the weekend, and it's all pretty obvious stuff. The Marvel stuff, I just I get everything on.
Yeah.
So I'm reading just about everything out of Marvel, and occasionally I'll do something like, oh, we've put out the Ta-Nehisi Captain America in hardcover. Let me buy a copy of that because I just want it, because I edited it. That's mine, and I want it on the shelf or whatever. But so most of what was in the box that came in, 9 or 10 books, a couple of DC books, Brian's books, notably Action Comics
Yeah.
and Legion. An Usagi Yojimbo I know was there. The latest Once and Future was there by Kieran Gillen and Dan Mora. So I try to read across a wide swath of stuff. And I have I have a bookcase that's sort of in my den. It's literally over here to my right.
Yeah.
That's all the stuff that hasn't been read yet. I'm way behind, so there's like a shelf and a half of books there that every once in a while I'll sit down and I'll decide, let me grab all the Amazing Spider-Mans for the last 6 months and just read them in a chunk, or
Nice.
whatever other title I might need to know a little more about, or catch
Yeah.
up on from us or from them.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, for me, well, in preparing for Donnie, I promised Donnie I would read every single comic he ever wrote, the entire Kate's catalog. I have read it, so I'm ready for him.
That's dangerous. That's dangerous to do
But
all at once.
But I'll tell you,
It
his last 5 issues of Thor are
really good,
insane,
really good.
insane. That's where I
Yep.
really feel cheated. I mean, I talk to Donnie every day, so it's just it's no big deal to talk to Donnie. In fact, I was kind of bored to talk to Donnie, but I really wanted to talk to him about his last 5 issues of Thor, because they're amazing. They're beautifully illustrated, colored. It's the whole package. It's epic. It's exactly what you want Thor to be. On the other hand, sort of not Marvel wise, I'm reading Chaikin's Hey Kids
That's a good
comics.
book.
Yeah, I mean, I
That's a
love
good
this
book.
so much that I actually virtually twisted Howard's arm on Facebook, and he sent me PDFs of everything he's got done. I think like several issues of this stuff. It is a great, great, great book. But yeah, so that's what I've inundated myself in reading in these last few days. So we have another. Let's see, we got another question here. Oh, this is kind of a cool one. Hold on, Tom. Hang on.
All right.
I like this question. Hold on, just pulling it up. All right. in the same vein, what is from Carlos Zepeda? What is a favorite comic to reread?
Well, we actually had at Reading Circle about, I guess it was now it's 4 weeks ago because we've been in quarantine ever since. But the last Reading Circle we did, we had a knockdown, drag out conversation about what the best Marvel story of all time is.
Mhm.
So multiple issue or single issue, one
Wow.
story. What's the best? And in
Tom,
general,
I'm gonna stop you. You're gonna embarrass me. I know when you give the answer. I know you will.
don't get
So
ahead of
so
yourself,
so pick the
Jose.
second one. Pick the second favorite. Go ahead. See what
The
I did
the
there?
Yeah, very nice, very nice. I can see how you got to where you are. Um, the one unassailable Marvel story that everybody could agree on,
Hmm?
and we could not come up with something to knock it off the pedestal,
Right.
was Daredevil Born Again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nothing we could come up with, and there were a ton of great classic Marvel stories, but pound for pound, Daredevil Born Again, just front to back, it's so tight, it's so lean,
It's a work of art. It is a work of
it's
art.
so beautifully drawn by David Mazzucchelli. It does everything right, and it's so sharp. That there's even all these years later, we could not come up with another story that we thought packed the same kind of a punch.
Yeah.
So that's that story that's always worth revisiting.
Yeah, it is the quintessential definition of back in my music days. We had a wonderful producer, and I remember her telling us, she loved our band, and what she loved about the band was the fact that we were a band. We were a really great group of guys, and the mix was great, and we'd known each other for many years. And she said, she said, Joe, combinations, good combinations breed success. And when I read Born Again, that's the first thing that hit me, right? Because it's not just Frank Miller, it's not just Mazzucchelli, it's that you lose track of who starts and who ends, and it's just a work of art that
Yeah,
comes from this immensely creative collaboration of these two guys, and then they carried it on, right, to do some Batman work as well, which was just as wonderful. But I still
yep,
think if I were to compare their Batman work with Daredevil, I still think that Daredevil takes the cake in there, and that's probably because Frank had already done Dark Knight. You know what I mean? So and Dark Knight was so
yeah,
epic to begin with that where do
yep,
you go, right? It's like you're at 10. Can your amp go to 11? They kind of go to 11, but Daredevil came out of nowhere. And it also came out. That's right around the time that I started reading comics, and I didn't. Well, I'm sorry. When I came back to comics, I was already like 25, 26, and I went back into the back issues, and I started reading that book. And I wasn't reading any Marvel comics, and no offense to Marvel at the time, it just wasn't. They weren't producing the kind of comics that I wanted to read. They were the
yeah,
best looking comics. Marvel had the best artists, but it was more an art driven company at that point than it was a story driven company. DC was they really had the top writers, but this was when Miller really became Miller at Marvel, and he wrote something that was head and shoulders above everything that was happening there. So it really stood out. Walt Simonson was also somebody who was doing some amazing work at Marvel at that time too.
yep,
His art I really gravitated to, but the rest of the stuff didn't really play for me. And again, that's just my personal feeling. I mean, I appreciate it, but it wasn't. If I only had a little bit of money in my pocket, I wanted to spend it on good writing, and hopefully there's good
yeah,
art with the good writing. Um, but the book that we talk about rereading books, it's funny because I just reached back on my shelf because I have my essentials. I don't have a big stack of essentials, but one of my essentials is actually, here's an old one. Remember this one, Time? Leave the
leave it
Chance.
to chance. Yeah, great
Leave the
book,
Chance.
terrific book.
An amazing book by James Robinson and Paul Smith with Jeremy Cox, and I love this book so much, and I think people have forgotten it. So if it's available
Yeah,
anywhere in back issue bins, pick it up. It's again, to me, it's a work of art. Super simple concept. The artwork is just unreal. It's Paul Smith being Paul Smith. It's just great stuff. So Tom, again, as Marvel's senior most editor, what the hell's your muckety muck title right now? What is it? You
it
king of editors? What the hell
it's
is it?
yeah, executive editor, vice president of publishing,
Wow. All right.
master of the Marvel arts.
That's a master of the Marvel Mystic Arts. So here's the question I'm sure that every creator writer, artist, inker, letterer always has at the tip of their tongue. What's your advice for breaking in? Go, Tom, go.
Oh, well, obviously the specifics of that advice change a little bit depending on what discipline you're talking about. But speaking broadly across, everything, you need three things, as I see it. You need talent, you need perseverance, and you need luck. And you kind of need them all in some ratio. Some guys need more luck than others. Some guys have more talent than others. Everybody needs to not just work hard, but to persevere, to be able to power through those times where it doesn't seem like you're ever going to get the break, and to keep being devoted to what you're doing and really, focused on both the goal and on just getting better in general at what you do, understanding the mechanics of storytelling, not just comic book storytelling, but storytelling in general, because that applies whether you're a writer, whether you're an artist, whether you're a colorist. Colorist is just as much a storyteller as a writer or artist if they're doing it properly. Even if you're a letterer, same thing. The real goal of the job is to tell stories, is to communicate information and in particular emotion through symbols on paper or on screens that impact on people as though they were reading about real human beings. And anything that kind of allows you to get that insight and get you a little closer to being able to do that and make an impact on somebody, that's the stuff. Within that, obviously, the specifics that I would tell a writer are going to be a little different than what I tell a prospective artist. But it really all boils down to to that thing. There's no secret way in, and everybody's story of getting in is the same, but they're all different. They're the same in that they've worked really hard. They persevered. They went through some bad times. They got a lucky
Yeah.
break. They made the most of that break, and then maybe things didn't go so well for a little while, and then suddenly things went better. Like all the stories are kind of the same, but every one of them is different. There's no secret to doing it. The best thing about now, as opposed to when I was coming up, is that in my day, because everything was done by hand and there was no internet and there was no electronic medium, you could do comics, but the only way to get them seen by a wider audience would be to do fanzines and things like that. And even there, you'd have print runs of minuscule amounts, where now you can do a drawing or do a page or do whatever and put it online and be seen theoretically by millions of people if you can attract that audience. And so particularly even for both writers and artists, if you want to do comics, if you want to do storytelling, it's a lot easier to be found now, for all the fact that there's a ton of people out there. The people whose work pops, it pops. You see it, and we're always looking for new people and new voices and things that excite us. So doing the work, doing it consistently, getting it out there where people can see it, and not being discouraged by the bad turns that may come or how difficult it is. If you really have the love for it and you really want to do it, that's got to kind of drive you until the point where you can make it. And then half of it is, even once you're in, that's only the first. Second part of it is staying in. Just because you got one gig doesn't mean you're going to get another one. And every time you're up at bat to do a job, you are competing with everybody else on the rack, and everybody else in the field, everybody that wants the gig that you've got. And so you constantly have to stay sharp, and give it your all and give it your best every time that you're there. No coasting is advisable, because there's always somebody coming up who's hungry and younger, and will happily take your spot
Yeah.
if you're not giving it your all.
Yeah. I would add a fourth thing to that list. And by the way, apologies to everybody over there. I was having a little bit of a camera issue. One of my cameras, I think the battery is starting to go. But either way, I have a failsafe. Just double checking it. The fourth thing I would add, I'll be honest with you. I'm not a big believer in luck. I could talk more about that, but I'll add a fourth and not take away luck there for you, Tom.
Mhm.
The fourth, I think, is also your attitude, right? your ability to work well within a system, regardless of what company's system that is, right? I mean, how many times have you? I know I've experienced it several times where you give a portfolio review, and and the young creator taking the review is either not taking it well or pushing back and arguing and
Yeah.
saying stuff like you're wrong, you don't know, no, this is really what I, and you could almost tell very very early on this is going to be someone that is going to be very very tough to work with within our system, right? They may end up being a brilliant auteur on their own and self-publish and do that kind of stuff. Maybe they weren't meant to work within a system. That's all great, well, well and good, but your ability to work within any given company's system, right? Whether you're freelancing for a comic book company, an animation house, if you're a freelance illustrator, right, for magazines, people want to work with people that they want to work with, right? And artists and writers, I'll talk more about this in subsequent streams about handling your signature, your name as a brand, right? Your name is a brand, just as Marvel is a brand, just as Disney's a brand, just as DC is a brand. And I know this, from all these years of working at Marvel, working in editorial, there are certain creators, their names come up, and people go, yeah, 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 it'd be great. I'd love to work with that creator on this project. There's other creators as we start to sort of fill in holes, right? The publishing plan, right? Well, a particular book needs an art, a particular book needs a writer, and someone may mention a particular talent's name who people have had troubles with, and you can see that the room kind of deflates and goes, "Oh, okay." Is the effort to work with a particular person worth the amount of effort that you're going to put into this book and what this book is going to sell or how this book is going to do, or is that again that combination that breeds success? Is it worthwhile? I mean, these are the hard truths, right? And so you don't want to be on that sort of mental Rolodex of editors that when your name is mentioned, they go, ah, whether it be because your attitude is a rough one, you're abrasive, during creative calls, or you just don't deliver the work, you disappear, you're late, whatever it may
Yep.
be. You don't want to be on that list, right? Now, taking artists for example, right? There are certain artists that just are slower than others, but if you know that going in, you could build around that, right? It's not for lack of working. It's just that the work is so detailed and meticulous, whatever it may be. Or someone who paints comic books, right? You know that's going to take longer. But it's the sort of the more erratic stuff that drives editors crazy, and then you end up in that Rolodex of someone's head where you go, I don't know if I want to work with this person. But sometimes you could see that right at a portfolio review, and you could tell
Yeah.
and sometimes people grow out of it, right? It might just be someone who's really too young to know what they're doing or how they're coming across. But being personable, right? Being sort of being present as you're getting your review is so important. Being able to take the critique, right? Because the John Romita Senior formula of when you give a portfolio review, find the good, right? Find that good thing to open with and talk about, and show that creator exactly where their strengths are, and how they can build on those strengths. Then the second act of that review is now tell them the stuff that they're doing wrong. Be frank about it. Don't be cruel, but be frank so they understand what they have to get better at. And then the third act is come back and tell them the positive. You got this stuff to build on, the stuff that's really good, build on that, right? But you do that really well. What you really need to work on is the stuff that you don't do well, the stuff that's really hard right now. Work on that. And then when you get those things together, here's the good news: you stand a chance at really making it, right? And if we're giving a review, you could tell right away how someone is taking it, right? And it's always going to hurt. It's always going to hurt. But can you go home, give yourself 24 hours to sulk
Yeah.
about it, and then the next morning get up and hit it and hit those problem areas? If you do that on a consistent basis, you will get much much better, and your chances of becoming professional, if you do have the talent, are astronomically high. That's the good news, right? The bad news is you're gonna have to take some sucker punches, some gut punches, some punches to the knees, kicks to the knees, and punches to the jaw before you get there. But that's really like in any career, especially in the arts. It's like anything. Um, So, all right, we have a question, a Donnie Cates question. Let's ask a Donnie Cates question since Donnie isn't here. Um, so, Dakota Cross, what do both of you think makes Donnie a writer that people love so much? Aside from the hair, let's
Uh,
take the hair aside. He's got great hair, and I'm jealous that he can color it any color he wants. Uh, but what do you think? What do you think makes Donnie so successful? I mean, we have a lot
um,
of successful writers, right? And everybody has their own formula. What do you think is Donnie's formula?
First of all, I think Donnie he thinks big, and he thinks crazy. When he was first starting out, one of the things I used to say about him is he throws wildly, he pitches wildly. In that he would come up with ideas, but wouldn't always quite yet know how to put them together or how to execute them or how to get all the beats to fall properly. And that's something that he's really figured out
Yeah.
over the last couple of years. Now that he's started to do regular work and get published, and people have reacted to it and so forth. Typically, he's got a simple idea at the heart of whatever story he's telling.
Mhm.
It's a very simple, clean, almost a Mark Millar like idea. Mark is one of those guys that I think of that, typically when you boil his stories down, they only need to be about 4 words long, and the high concept is all there. Like, you get what the thing is about. I think Donnie's really good with that. I think Donnie is really good, and probably undersold because his stuff is ultimately so bombastic and so big thinking, about hitting smaller emotional moments that really land nicely.
Mhm.
I think and it's that combination of he's got the Gonzo bombast of something, creating something like Cosmic Ghost Rider. Cosmic Ghost Rider on paper should not work. It's a lunatic idea. It feels like
Yeah.
somebody went to the recipe bank and pulled a whole bunch of random ingredients and mixed them
Yeah.
together, and yet somehow in executing that, both just the verve with which he did it, and the fact that he, in the course of telling that character story in the larger context of that Thanos story, he made you care about all the stuff that Frank Castle had gone through and what brought him to this point, and the weight that he had carried for this time, and he made it work to the point where people wanted to see more of that character.
Yeah.
I think he's really good at that, and he's really good at particularly the big swing.
Yeah. I
I'm
need.
also I'm also really
Okay.
impressed by the work he's done in making Eddie Brock a character that I care about. Eddie Brock had been around for like 30 years. He'd been Venom. I edited the book for like a bunch of years in the 90s, and there wasn't a lot to that character. He was a very thin, not terribly well developed character, and he didn't have a lot of sides or a lot of facets to him. And that had really been the case all the way up to the point where Donnie took it over. And Donnie spent enough time thinking about that guy and walking in his shoes and figuring out how to bring out those things that, the underlying pain and trauma that made him the dude he was, to the point where you could root for him to try to be better, to try to overcome the things he was dealing with, and you want to see him succeed, and you want to see him, stand up again and get it right, even though he's kind of a screw up, and he's more likely to not be able to do it. And that's a real talent. That's something that nobody's really accomplished in the 30 years that Venom has been a character.
Yeah.
And I feel like he really has. Like, I care about Eddie Brock now a lot more than I did before Donnie was writing him.
Well, let's not forget Stegman, the Steg. You
Oh,
know,
oh, absolutely.
it's that
Stegman is
combination.
great.
Combinations breed
Yep.
success.
Yep.
I'm going to describe Donnie's. I figured out exactly how to describe Donnie's work, and eventually, when he listens to this on playback, I can assure you that whatever his multicolored hair is right now, his head is just going to go right. Um, the
Be careful.
simplest.
Don't be too nice. It will just come back to bite us.
I know, I know. I'm going to hate myself after I say it, but it's I for me it's a real truism. Donnie's writing is a quote. Donnie writes like Jack Kirby draws. You know what I'm saying? Not like Jack Kirby wrote, like Jack Kirby draws. Everything is in motion. Quiet scenes are in motion, and he gravitates towards artists that do this as well. And I think part of this is also Donnie's art background because he went to art school, but
Yeah.
but he writes like Jack Kirby draws. It's as simple as that to me. Everything is, there's going to be epic, universal, massive explosion of something. His characters, again, quiet scenes, but they're in motion. There is forward progress all the time. So much so that I think that sometimes 20 pages isn't enough for a single issue for him, right? Because he has these world spanning ideas, and we have a lot of
Yep.
writers that do that. We've been very, very fortunate at Marvel to have creators that can do that, and Donnie's one of these guys. He just gets it. He gets exactly what it means to write in that sort of Marvel vein. So Tom, actually, we're getting towards the witching hour here, which I designate the witching hour exactly when my battery's going to drop dead. I ordered a charger for my DSLR.
Coincidentally,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, you're about to die too. By the way, for those of you watching the Mark Miller interview last week, and Mark's Skype dropped out, I apologize to Skype. It was not Skype that dropped out. Mark forgot to plug his computer in, and his battery just died. But what could be
that's
more
such a
Mark? What could be
that's
more
such a
Mark than
Mark
that?
thing. Absolutely.
Mark still has like a little flip phone from like 19 whatever. It's just he's just not with the technological world, and he likes it that way. Um, but anyways, yeah, I actually ordered a charger for my DSLR camera, and like everything else, it's backed up, and maybe I'll get it, maybe I won't. But we are hitting the witching hour. So Tom, anything in closing? Anything you're looking forward to, and anything about message to Marvel readers out there?
I'll tell
Fans,
you.
retailers, creators, anybody. What do you got?
I tell you, a message to you. I've only been able to see like one and a half of the previous shows that you've done. I know,
That's
I
it.
know. I'm busy putting out comics.
I'm cutting you off.
Um,
Bye. No. Okay.
but I particularly enjoy it whenever you go through a piece of art that you've done or that somebody else has done
Oh, thanks.
and analyze how you got there,
Hmm?
what you were thinking, all the different stages, whatever feedback you got, how you adjusted and so forth. I find that stuff fascinating and I can
Oh,
watch
cool.
hours of that. So that's
Cool.
something that I would say do more because not even just you did the piece that went up on social media on
Yeah.
the first broadcast, and that's a single image. I'd like to see you do it with a page,
Okay.
because I bet people would learn a ton about storytelling and about how you approach breaking down a sequence and wringing the drama out of the moment and the subtle
Cool.
the subtle bits and things of that. Like I love all of that stuff, and I'm always every time you're up in the offices, we talk about, oh, we got to get you up here to do something like that in front of the staff, and then we never seem to find the time to actually schedule it and get it done.
Yeah. All
So
right.
even just
Well.
having that, I could just play that episode for everybody, and I don't
Right.
have to worry about it anymore.
Right.
Uh,
Well,
and your numbers go up. It's a win-win.
challenge accepted, Tom. You know what? That's actually a really good suggestion because I do want to do. Probably can't get it all in one stream, but I do want to do some stuff on storytelling,
Mhm.
on time, right? How time moves forward and backwards in
Yep.
comics, and the movement of the eye and stuff. I touched on it really, really briefly a few episodes ago. So we'll hopefully have a number of more episodes if we're lucky. If your language didn't get me booted, Tom. Uh,
Well,
it
I'm
figures,
here to help.
everybody's been really, really, really great, and then I get my first Marvel editorial guest, and boom, there it is. You're
There it
just
is.
just like in the offices.
You
Uh,
you should have called me like 10 minutes ahead of time.
yeah,
And you
yeah.
could have briefed me.
This has been great, Tom. Really, thank you so much. And that's a really good suggestion. I think I'll do that. I know exactly the story that I may want to do with it, and see if folks out there dig it, or if they'd rather see me drawing. But we will actually have some drawing later on this week. So Tom, let me say goodbye right now. I'm gonna hang up on you.
All right.
And thanks again, man.
Thanks, everybody. Yep.
Stay safe, brother. All right, and I hope your family and
Yep.
everybody's
You
doing
too.
well. And
They
don't
are.
go out.
You as well.
Yeah,
All right.
trying. Well, again, underground bunker. I'm doing the best I can. I will eventually have to do one of these from somewhere where there is windows. Uh, it's starting to feel a little bleak in here. All right, thanks, man. I will talk to you later, Tom. Be good.
All right, Jeff.
All right, let's see. Let's move on from Tom. He's still there. Okay. Here we go. Hey guys. So again, apologies. Like I said, Donnie had a bit of an emergency that came up. So we will reschedule with Donnie. I'll let you know. And again, hope you guys are staying safe. Hope you enjoy that impromptu, completely unrehearsed and unprepared conversation with Tom. He is really truly one of the best editors who's ever worked in this field. And I say that as someone who was editor in chief and relied on him heavily, heavily, heavily to do so much of the heavy lifting because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have a clue. Thanks to people like Tom. We did okay. So who's next? You may be asking. Who's next? Okay, are we ready? Are you guys ready? I'm looking for it here. Hold on. All right. So coming up should be. We're gonna try for the morning. So coming up next will be Deborah Ann Wool. Deborah Ann Wool. I keep doing that. Deborah Ann Wool is coming on. Karen Page herself. Just an awesome talent. One of my favorite people, and she has decided to lower her standards completely to come on this show, this mess of a show, and we'll have some fun. We'll of course talk, about Daredevil, maybe about Karen Page, about Punisher, about what the role meant, about her methodology, whatever. And most importantly, we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. She is a master at it. Really, really great at it. So I don't play, but I'm dying to learn. So next week, we got, not next week, sorry, Thursday morning, we have Deborah Ann. And that's it for me, guys. I think, did the best we could. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And, as always, this will be continued. And stay safe. Love you guys. I'll see you in the funny books. Here comes the music. Hold on. Somewhere it comes. Hold on. Where is it? Oh, no. Where is that music? I'll get it right someday.
We were kings of Brooklyn.